Today I have for you a tale of two forges. It was the best of shipping and it was the worst of shipping. Okay, well maybe that's a bit corny, but I thought I would relate a little bit of a forge acquisition or purchase, trial and error, so to speak. But mostly I want to take a moment and talk about the Chile forge and the fact that it has been worked hard, abused, and used to the point that it has to be repaired. And I'll show you what came in the mail the other day, or UPS rather, to take care of the Chile forge after talking it over with them. But first I'll tell you about the not so good experience. The Chile forge has been an outstanding forge. It works hard. It's a great production forge. But because I forge weld in it so much, it really gets beat up bad. The high heat isn't good for it. Even though the refractory is rated for that, it wears it out. The higher the heat you work at, the more it wears it out. And I end up with flux goobers all over the floor, and even though I try to use sacrificial floors, they don't last, they crack, things leak through, and it still presents a problem. So I thought I would buy a second forge that would be just for non-forge welding use, for more delicate, smaller pieces. And I had always heard wonderful things about Swan Gas Forges. They are supposed to be kind of state-of-the-art, have little features that make them a little bit safer, a little bit more practical, user-friendly. The problem here in the U.S., though, is that they are not made in the U.S. and they have to be imported. And there are few, perhaps only one dealer who imports Swan Gas Forges. So after much searching online, I finally found a dealer who carried Swan Gas Forges, or one model of the Swan Gas Forge. And I went ahead and placed my order after cringing at the price, but decided that for years I've been hearing about these things and how great they were, and I thought I would go ahead and bite the bullet. If I have a forge like that for 10 years, the price is negligible by the time you're done with it, and it's well worth it. So I ordered it, they shipped it very quickly, very efficiently. It was here in about 5 days. The box was beat to death. There were forge parts showing through the box. On opening it up, some of the bubble wrap sub-packages had been torn and there were loose parts in the box, and the bottom of the forge where the sheet metal legs are formed were crumpled and bent and really pretty much useless. So I contacted the dealer and said, what do you want to do about it? And they said, well, send it back, obviously, which was clearly what was going to happen. But they also offered to give me a whopping 10% discount on it, which, as far as I'm concerned, 10% just doesn't cut it to take what is essentially a used and battered piece of equipment. So I called UPS back, or they called UPS back, told them to come get it. UPS came and got it, took it back, and the dealer sent a second forge. It came in a little over a week, so still very good service shipping the second forge out. It arrived in essentially the same condition. The box clearly is not suitable for shipping something as heavy as a gas forge. The shipping weight was 84 pounds, so it's a heavy box. And the box just couldn't stand it. Again, bent sheet metal, the sub-packages showing damages, whether or not all the parts were still in there, who knows? And until you assemble it, you just don't know. Contacted the dealer again. They said, well, we just ship them out in the same boxes we get them in, and we don't repackage them. And I asked if they opened them and inspected the forges to see if they were arriving to them in good condition, and they didn't. So we decided that it was better to just ship it back. They issued a refund. All is good there, but it's just a little cautionary tale that sometimes things don't work out the way you hope they will, and even though you seem to be getting good service, sometimes the product you get isn't as good as it might be. I still would like to try a Swan forge, but I'm just not sure if it's ever going to happen, because either Swan is not shipping them to the U.S. in boxes suitable for them to make the transatlantic journey, or the U.S. dealer is not repackaging them appropriately for the handling that they receive coming out here. And personally, I think it's probably the original box. And part of the reason I believe that is because I am now going to talk about the parts I got from Chili Forge, which is essentially a whole new forge, and there is not a scratch on the boxes. Also came from UPS, so the same people have been handling it, and the boxes are heavy, they are well sealed, they are in perfect condition, no damage, no abuse, and I think when I open them up I'm going to be very pleased with what I find in them. So that's really a attaboy for Chili Forge, and that's sort of what this video is about. I'm not sponsored by Chili Forge, they're not paying me to do a video, but I thought if I'm going to get good service like that from somebody after having less than great service from somebody else, I think they deserve a mention, and hopefully if some of you are looking for gas forges, you may consider going and looking at their products. So let's look at the old forge that needs to be repaired or essentially just scrapped and start over. So here is the Chili Forge that I've had. It's the Cayenne model. It's a 2-burner oval forge. It has 2 very nice burners, mostly stainless steel. They don't show any signs of wear and tear at all. But unfortunately the lining, because of the high heat, is just really starting to degrade, which means you have to make continuous repairs to keep the ceramic fibers out of the air. You got to put some sort of cement in there to seal that ideally, and that starts to become a problem when a little bit more of it falls apart every day. But I've used this for 2 years, and 2 years in my shop forge welding axes and adzes and froes and things like that on a regular basis in this forge is probably equivalent to 10 or 15 years in a home hobby shop, maybe even more. So don't use that to compare for your shop. A full-time shop is hard on equipment, and unfortunately that just means it has to be repaired, and that's one of the downsides of gas forges is the ceramic insulation, which is the most efficient refractory material to insulate a forge with, is also fragile. And even putting the rigidizers and refractory cements over that to make them a little bit more substantial, they're still subject to damage, and it's easy to damage them. And the high heat does start to degrade them. They start to expand and contract with the heat, and that develops cracks and things start to sag and droop, and even though you may not notice it, it does start to allow heat to get around the burner outside the insulating layer, and things start to degrade. And of course anything just outside the forge, on the forge housing, really oxidizes badly because it isn't protected by any kind of refractory material. There's no KO-wool, no insul board or anything like that out there. And it's almost impossible to do that with a gas forge. So it's certainly not a criticism of their design, it's just the nature of the beast. And eventually these things deteriorate. I have yet to have a gas forge that didn't. And I've been using gas forges for about 20 years, so it's just part of gas forge owning that if you're running them at welding heat, they are not going to last as long as running them lower and keeping them more in a forging heat of around 1800 or something like that. But other than that, this has been a great forge. And the amount of use that I have gotten out of it, the amount of material I've put through this, is probably just pennies per piece that has gone through here. So it's worth repairing or replacing the forge. And I was just going to reline it. I was going to cut all the metal off, weld some new metal on here, and do the best I could to fix the body of the forge. It would never look like it did originally, and order reline parts from them so I had the exact same materials, because they offer a nice hard floor and hard sidewalls, which really helps protect it. Until those hard sidewalls finally cracked and started falling in, this thing was doing great. But after talking with Stacy over at Chili Forge, she convinced me that it was probably a better idea to just replace the whole forge body. Anyways, the burners will be reused on the new forge, so I didn't have to buy new burners. I just have to assemble the new forge parts and take these burners out. Of course, these burners are kind of oxidized and corroded in. They don't want to come out, so I'm going to have to struggle with these a little bit. There's no set screws. They just kind of snap in place, and I can wiggle them, but so far I haven't been able to get one out. So I'm going to work on that a little bit. But we're also going to take a look at what came in these boxes and see what a good packing job they did. Like I say, these boxes look just like they probably did when they left Chili Forge's warehouse or factory or shop or whatever you want to call it and headed for Beulah. In perfect condition, so I see no reason why the forge inside shouldn't be in perfect condition. But we're going to open these up and I'm going to unbox it, and I think I will skip the narrative and hit the fast forward button and get through this fairly quickly, because I'm afraid it's probably going to be a longer operation than you want to watch. Well, here is the new Chili Forge body. This one is a little bit different than the old one in that this uses a fire brick floor instead of the kiln shelf style floor. So I just need to get the fire bricks put in here. And they make this stuff fit so well that it's just almost a snap-in fit. So it's real nice, well done stuff here. Unfortunately, it's not quite exactly the width of 3 fire bricks, so you get a little spacer. So don't drop the spacer on the floor. That would be bad. But other than that, this forge is just about ready to go. Yep, that looks pretty good. So the only other thing I need to do to this is put the burners in. Now the Chili Forge burners just slip in. They've got a tight fitting cap that's got some KO insulation built into it, so they seal up real nice. Unfortunately, the extreme heat on the old burners has caused them to flare out, kind of bell-shaped on the end, so I could not just pull them out. I had to get in there, take all the old insulation out, completely scrape all the refractory out of there, and get in there with an angle grinder and grind off the ends of the burner flares or the burner nozzles, whatever you want to call it, to get them out of there. So those are going to need to be replaced. So I'm going to call Chili Forge this evening, and we'll get those on the way. They'll probably be here early next week. So we're going to be without the gas forge for a little while, but that means we might work in the coal forge some, or we'll just do a whole lot of cold work in the meantime. So that's just a little look at the Chili Forge and the care that they put into packaging it. I'm sorry we didn't actually get to fire it up today. I had hoped we would, but the burners suffered right along with everything else, and I'm really not surprised, but it's only the last few inches of the burner, and it is removable, so I can take it back off, I can replace it. I just need to order the part from them, and I don't think it'll be too expensive. Now, some of you out there right now are thinking, well, why didn't you just reline the old one? Wouldn't that have been a lot cheaper? Yes, it would have been. But remember, I'm running a full-time shop, or I'm trying to anyways, and if I spend my time doing that, then I'm not spending my time making customers hinges and other things. And personally, I am better at this, and I can make more money making customer product than what it costs me to put the same amount of time, or the amount of time that I would have to put into repairing the forge into that. So to buy the parts and have somebody else do what they do best and allow me to spend my time doing what I do best pays off in the long run. Yes, if I had more time and I had less income from making product, I would probably do things like that myself. It's not that big a deal. It can be done. But it's way better for me and way better for the overall economy among blacksmiths and blacksmith suppliers if we support each other. So I'm happy to support Chili Forge and pay them for the parts to do this. And as I was talking about earlier in the video with the Swan Forge, I would be happy to support Swan Forge. I just want some guarantee that I'm going to get something shipped in a box that will survive. I don't think it's the quality of their forge at all that's an issue. It was just the quality of the box. So at some point, I think I am going to still try to find a Swan Forge. I'm just not sure how. And I don't know if I'm going to have to pay international shipping to get it shipped direct in hopes that it survives better doing it that way. But it may be a few more years yet because I'm really not in the mood to spend that much money on international shipping right now. By the way, did I mention it was raining a little bit? Not going to be a very big rain. The sun is shining all around us, but it's actually raining right here. And it sounds a lot harder than it really is because we're in a metal building. So it really echoes in here. But it's better than the rain we've had the last month or so because it's actual water. So we're kind of glad to see this. Now we're going to be without a forge in the shop, or without a gas forge, for probably a week. I've got a little mini one that doesn't work very well, but we might do some work in it just to have something to work in. We're going to have to figure all that out until I get the new burner tips for the Chili Forge. But I have another gas forge project in the works. There's one that I will ultimately share here on YouTube, but I don't have everything I need for it. But I'll show you real quick what my idea is. So this is the little all fire brick forge that I have in mind to build. I'll build a metal shell for it, and it will have a single burner which is coming from hybrid burners. It will go right through the middle. Soft brick on the top and the sides for better insulation, hard brick for durability on the bottom, but no kale wool or ceramic fiberboard that is fragile and easily destroyed. And while this forge may get up to welding heat because of the small chamber and the quality burner, I don't really plan to weld in it because I want a forge that stays clean. Unfortunately, that burner won't be here for another day or two, and I don't have the material for the shell. I need to go to the steel yard and get some decent sheet metal or light plate to make that shell out of. So I know that was a bit of a haphazard video on unboxing a Chili Forge and a little bit of a rant on the Swan Forge, but don't take that too seriously. It's not really sour grapes, just mostly observation and sort of a buyer beware sort of a thing. And make sure you inspect your equipment when you get it. It's real easy to damage stuff in shipping. It happens all the time, and it's usually pretty easy to deal with. A refund is coming on the forge. It's not a problem. It's just sort of frustrating that you didn't get what you ordered, but it's just the way it goes sometimes. Just make sure you do inspect it, make sure it works right, and contact whoever you bought it from and discuss it with them, which is why I'm not mentioning the dealer's name. And I'm not really trying to trash Swan, because I do think their forge is an excellent product. I've seen other people that have them, and they all love them. And they've had the same forge for years without a problem or without a reline issue. Of course, they don't forge weld in them as far as I know, and I think that's a big thing. And that holds true for the Chili Forge. My Chili Forge was beat to death, and that largely because I will run it at forge welding temperatures for 5 or 6 hours a day sometimes, and that's really hard on them. That's the maximum that they're designed to take, and running anything at maximum is going to wear it out faster. Running your car at full RPMs is going to wear your engine out a lot faster than staying at a reasonable speed. But anyways, I think that's just enough of that for today. I'm still going to be working on the draw knife, and for that matter, I have several of them started. These are all welded up, and they're into billets and marked where I need to draw out the tangs. I just haven't gotten to that stage yet. And since we're waiting for a forge to work in, it may be a little while before we get to that stage. But we will be able to finish this one because we can do the all the filing and grinding and hardening and tempering without a regular forge. And I might do this in the coal fire, especially if we get a little more rain. Even though a coal forge presents very little fire danger because it doesn't put out embers, it still makes people nervous to smell the smoke, and I don't want to be on bad terms with the neighbors, and if I can keep them from worrying about what I'm doing up here, I'm better off in the long run. So if I don't have to run the coal forge right now while it's so dry out, I probably won't. But if that's the only way we can get things done, I won't have much choice. So as always, I hope you can head out to your shop. I hope you can make something. I hope you've got a forge that works right now. But do try to stay safe. Do wear your safety glasses. And if you're messing with the insulation material, the K-wool, the Insa-wool, those things in a gas forge, do wear respiratory protection. That stuff's pretty nasty, and it can cause real health problems if you don't. So I strongly encourage you, anytime you're working with that stuff, wear respiratory protection and seal it up in your forge so that it can't get out while you're using the forge. By that I mean some sort of refractory cement is probably the best idea for sealing up those forges. There's various products out there, and I'm not going to worry about that right now. Do your research online to see what might be the best product for you.